Hi, welcome to the week 10 for AutoCAD Essential for Civil Engineers. So, this is the week in which we are going to do some very important topics like layouts, plottings, and some advanced tools. Now, let's see what we are going to cover in this session. So, after the completion of this session, you would be able to use layouts, plot objects, use groupings, and use multi-lines. So, before we jump start to the layouts, first of all, let me explain you what is the concept of the layouts and viewports in AutoCAD. Now, viewports are basically the ports where you work. For example, we have a viewport over here in which I am working right now. And also, the AutoCAD has got two spaces. One is the model space over here, and the other is the paper space. That means whatever you work in AutoCAD, you work on the model space at full scale. And later on, when you are going to create the sheets of it, you are going to create the sheets and the layout at a particular paper size. So here, first of all, see about the viewports that are available and we can work at in models place, as well as how we can set up the sheet for printing, for the publishing, or for the plotting, so that we can have the sheets ready for the GFC or the working drawings. Now we will be taking different examples, like we will be having a metric example and we will also be having a feet inches example. So here I have started with a metric option where we have a plan that we have already done in millimeters. So here, so before that, I would like to tell you about, because when you are taking a sheets, you have to go with the annotation scales and the scales of the sheet. So every sheet would be having a paper size like A0, A1, A2, A3, A4, all are having a different paper size, and the prints are taken as per the scales are taken as per the paper size what we are going to fit. Now let's take an option over here. See a particular example over here. First of all, we'll be learning about viewports, what viewports are, and then we will be learning about layouts and then about the plotting. So let's start. The commands for the viewports are here. So you can see that in the view tab, there is a model viewport. So we are talking about the model viewport. We are not talking about the viewport in the layout. So here, if you look into the viewport configuration, you can change your screen. That means you can have 4 or 2 vertical, 2 horizontal, or 4 equal you can take. So that if you can basically, if you're working on a 3D, this viewport is going to make you a lot of difference in working faster. So here you can basically have different objects in different view scales. Also in 2D, let's say if you're working in a particular viewport in elevation, so I can work here in elevation and then I can work here in plan. So the point is, the viewport is basically the screen is divided into 4 parts and different parts is having a different view range. So that's how. For example, here I go with the view. So let's say if I create a view of this elevation. So here, so very simple. You have this top view over here. So you don't have a 3D view, so you don't need to have it. But let's say if I save the view, I save the elevation as a view. So I go with a new view and I save this as, let's say, elevation. So keep it like this. So this particular view is the elevation view. And then let's say if I want to work in a different legend, so I can save these views and work in multiple viewports. So this viewport can be single, twice, I can have it split into 2, or this viewport can be 3 left. So you can arrange this viewport as per your convenience as you are going to start working into it. Apart from that, there are basically named viewport. For example, the named viewport is create a new viewport. Let's say I name it as V1, and here let's say I set up some styles. For example, for 2D, I change view to elevation. So I'm giving let's say for a particular model configuration and let's say the visual style. So here you can see that I have created a named view with this particular view in elevation. Now, for example, if I want to save this, so now let's say if I go to the single view and I select my named view as V1 I will find the same view arrangement that I had saved. So let's take another example. Let's say if I zoom this particular, I create a particular view over here. So I make it a name of the view as plan and save it. So now let's say if I change this to elevation, the elevation view will come, and if I change into plan, the plan view will come. Now if I want to save this viewport with this particular configuration, so I make it 2, and this is basically where I would say that suggest that setup is 2D and the current view is, let's say, plan. So you can see that this particular viewport configuration will be saved with this particular settings. Now here, now the view is plan. This setting is plan and this is the elevation view. So you can change the view to elevation. Let's say if you want to change go to the view manager and change it to elevation. That's all. So here, here you want to save the view. Let's say if you have saved the view to whatever the view configuration, so you can see that those views will be let's say if you want to go to v1, the v1 will be, so different viewports can be created in the name viewport. Now if you want to join two viewports, let's say if you want to join these two viewports, so you can always have select the dominant viewport, that is the current viewport, and select viewport to join, for example these two viewports, and you want to make it a single viewport. So again, this viewports can be joined. The important thing is, what is the use of the viewport? The use of the viewport is you can do multiple works in a drawing. Let's say in a particular model you have an elevation, you have a section, and you want to work them in different viewports to make them efficient. So you can also split the screen, like for example you might be working on multiple monitors. In what one you can basically put the plan, and on the other you can put the elevation, and you can start working into it. Otherwise, or these viewports are also docking, so you can see that these viewports can, the sizes can be changed from here. So this can be docked. So the good thing about this is you can increase or decrease the size of any of the viewport. Now coming back to the layouts. Now the most important part is the paper space or the page setup. Now by default, if you look into it, so here you have got, let's say I'm changing my viewport to single viewport, and here what I'm trying to do is I'm basically trying to explain you what is the difference between model space and layouts. So model space is the place where you work, and the layout is basically the paper which is set in order to take the printouts. For example, if you by default the layout 1 and layout 2 are there. Now over here in the layout 1 there is a page which is set over here. So you can measure. Now you can see the icon of the UCs has changed to a triangle in which X and Y direction is shown in a triangle. And if you measure the distance, you can see that the page size is 299 and this is probably around 206. So this is a A4 paper size that has been set. Similarly, if you go to layout 2, you can also measure it. So we can have different page setup. For example, it's same. So this page is a A4 paper size. So we will be creating more pages, paper sizes, and putting into the layout. Now let's say how we will be starting out with the layouts. So if these layout tabs are not visible, so here you can see the layout tabs, you can put it off, the file tabs. So file tabs is this one. And okay, after the session, I'm talking about the tile horizontally and tile vertically. Okay, I can do it now itself. So let's say if we have got multiple files open, let's say right now I have only one file, so let's not discuss about it. Let's come to the topic now. So now layout is something that it is the page in which we are going to take. For example, to start with the layout, I want to create a new layout. I'm not going to use it, and later on I will use it. So I go with a command called the layout. Here, first example is I want to create layout for the elevation, and I want to create the layout for the plan. So I have a new layout. I say new, and I name this layout. Enter new layout name. I name it as floor plan. Press enter. So a layout with the floor plan is now created. Now I can create more layout by clicking in the plus button, and by default the layout 3 would be there. So I right click on the layout 3, I can rename it. I can make this as, let's say, the elevation. Later on, if I want to delete this layout, I can select them and delete the layout. So I can have as much as layout in my drawing. So I'll be showing you some of the good examples of the layout. But first of all, let's say if I have this floor plan layout, and so by default you can see the paper space is there and there is a rectangle over here. This is the viewport. Now in this viewport, this is the screen of the AutoCAD, the viewport in which you were creating. So this is where the view is there. So in order to go inside the screen, there are two commands. First is the MS for the model space. That means you are inside the model. You can zoom them, zoom out. That means you're inside the screen. And the other command is the paper space. That is you are in the paper, you are in the model. You are in the paper and you are in the model. So when you are in the model, you can zoom the screen and zoom the view. But if you are in the paper, you will be zooming the paper. Now, if this viewport, if you select and erase it, so there will be only the model space would not be there, the paper would be there. Now, I want to basically now create a viewport in which I want to create the plan, because I have deleted the viewport. Okay, so for, let's see, in the layout tool, is there any other command that we should go for? Okay, then we will come into the viewport. You can copy an existing layout. For example, you want to copy the floor plan layout and make it. But before that, I would like to tell you about that. So if I want to create a layout with a template means is an inbuilt template where company's name, scales, and everything is given. Let's see what the template is. So now let's go with the layout and select the template option. So the template option is the DWT option. So here we have some, for architecture, for imperial IARC is there, but I want to take the template for the metric architecture. Apart from that, I can go to the sheet set and select the architectural metric. Let's go with the architectural metric. Now you can see the preview of it. There is a border over here. There is some templates over here. Open it. So it has the layout named as ISO A1. So the name of the file was metric architecture, but the layout that could be copied over here. So when I go for the layout option, you can see that the template that I had selected, for example, I selected this architectural metric, and the name ISO A1 is the layout name. I have to select it and press OK. So this name is basically, now this denotes that this particular template is of A1 paper size. So I can measure it. I can go with the distance tool and see the size. So it talks about around 800, and let's say if I go to the width, I can see the distance as around 600. So it's an A1 size, and here I can see some kind of drawing templates over there, like the project, like the name and address, and the paper space is definitely over here. So I can, if I want to decrease the size of this icon, so I go for UCS icon, and there's a property option over here, so I can reduce the size and make it small. So here I can see that there is a template that has been drawn, and I want to get my drawings inside the template and print it. So let's do it without a template, and let's do it with a template. Now other option in the layout is to rename it. For example, if I want to rename the floor plan, so enter layout to rename, let's say floor plan, because it is selected. So if I want to do the ISO one, so I can rename it by right clicking it and renaming it. Let's say if I want to rename it as, so go for a rename option, detailed plan. So now this, we have got 3 layouts now. So in the elevation also I erase this viewport. Now here, so if I want to go to the model space, so in this template we have a model space over here. If you go to the MS, right, and probably this is the This is a block. So we'll create our own model space over here. So let's go to the floor plan now. So I think if in the layout tool, if you go for the copy option, enter the name of the layout to copy, let's say floor plan, enter, and what is the name of the new, let's say detailed floor plan. So what will happen, whatever the style of the floor plan was, the paper size, another thing, it will be copied to a new layer. Similarly, if you want to delete a layout, so it will ask you delete option. So you can delete the floor plan, let's say. So it has deleted from the list. So now you have only 3 layouts. So then you have another option like template we have done. So you can save this as a template. So when we'll be building the template, we can save them. Okay, let's come to the detailed floor plan. We have this entire project over here, which we are going to take it down in the layout. So detailed floor plan. So here we have this particular page. So I want to create a viewport. So to create a viewport in a paper, the command is viewports. Okay. So viewports is the command for the model, but here if I want to create the viewport, MV is the command. So in the MV command is a multi-view. So I want to create a viewport in the paper so that I can arrange my model space and get the print of it. Now there are these different options of it, like specify corner of the viewport, on, off, fit, shape plot, lock, new, named, and other options. So let's say if I want to go with the corner, let's say if I'm selecting that, the plans will come at this particular size of the viewport. So now the viewport is done. So I can basically resize the viewport. I can select them. I can reduce the size. Let's say if I want to only get the plan in this particular, press escape, in the particular viewport. Now if I go to the MS, I can zoom it, and if I want to change the size of the viewport, I can scale them, and I can go inside and zoom it. Similarly, and the other thing is that if you want to provide a scale factor of this particular view in the page, so there is a scale factor that is coming over here. So if you say scale to fit, that means the entire drawing will be fit, but the moment you zoom it, you find that the scale factor is coming over here. It says 0.07816. So I can try with scales like 1:50, or I can try with the scale like, for example, whichever fits well, 1:20. So I have to go in the lower scale. So this is the scale of the viewport that the drawing objects will be having while we are printing it. So 1:100 is the scale. So if I make the scale as 1:100, so I go to the paper space, I increase the, let's say, viewport size so that I fit, and here in the paper space, model space, when I go and I pan the model, I use the pan command in the model and just pan it to the point key, it is visible. So now this viewport is now ready to create the plan, and this particular view is at a scale. If you go to model space, at a scale of 1%, this is 1:100. So this is how you can scale. So if you print it now in an A4 size paper, this particular model will be printed in 1:100. Similarly, if you want to create more viewports, so if you go with the MV command, so here you have corner point. So let's say if I want to create the elevation over here in this particular viewport, I go to MV and then I go to the MS command and I bring the elevation here. Now here again I have to check the scale factor. For example, it is 0.01403. So let's me check with 1:100. So 1:100 is fine. So now I will pan it. I'm not going to zoom more because it will. So when I go inside the model space, I'm not going to zoom it, but I'm going to pan it so that I can adjust the entire elevation in the paper. So now go to the paper space. Now you can move this viewport so that you can adjust this particular view so that it comes. So remember, once the scale is set, you should not basically zoom the drawing because it will affect the scale. Now look into it. If I zoom the drawing, the scale is getting affected. So right now, if I want to fix it in the 1:100, right? So I only can use the pan option, or I can lock the viewport, so there is an option of locking the viewport, where I lock the viewport, I make it on and select this viewport, so that further if I go to model space, I cannot zoom in and zoom out. The scale is locked. Similarly, I want to lock this viewport. I go to MV command. I go for lock option, select the option as on. I want to lock it, select the viewport, and the viewport is locked. So now these two viewports are locked for scaling or zooming, right? So if you want to delete them, you can always go to paper space. You can delete them. So you can select it, erase it, you can delete them. Now let's say if there are certain other options in MV, is we talked about on, off, lock. We talked about lock. Let's say if I want to make the objects inside the viewport off, I don't want to make it visible. So if I put it off, all the objects inside the viewport will be off. So if I say on, the objects inside the viewport will become on. Now remember, this is a locked viewport. Okay. Now next is basically going to the MV and using this option called Polygonal object named and new. Okay, that would be something that we are going to use. So let's say if I have a circle, I create a circle in this particular phase, and I want to create this as a viewport. So I will go with an object option, select this circle, and you will find that this particular circle is converted into a viewport. Now if you say MS model space, so you go inside, and let's say if you want to show some detail over here, let's say, so you can use, and then you can use the scale from here. Let's say if you want to use a scale of 1:20 or somewhat, or 1:40 would be the scale, would be better. So you can all, or 1:50 I think is more better. So this is something that you can use. Now in this paper you can see that you have got two different scales. One is 1:100 and 1:50. So this is how you create multiple viewports inside a layout. Now let's come to the detail plan here, because here I will create some viewport. So let's say I create a rectangle over here, or create a polygon and a polyline, and I want to create this as a viewport. That's great. So I go to MV, and then I have an option of object. I select this object, and now this object is not turning into a viewport because the object should be closed. So let me see if the object can be closed. So I have this object which is closed. I go to the MV option, go for the object option, and now you can see the object is. Now if you want to go inside the model space, so now if you have MS, you can go inside and check it for what type of object that you want to give. Similarly, in the MV command, there is an option called named option. So here in the named option, if you click in the named option, this will help you in order to insert the view name that you have created. Remember, we have created a view name called elevation. Now if I say elevation over here, so let me go to the MV command. So the named, if I say the named view, so here I can basically insert a named view into my viewport. So here the named view is elevation. For example, we have created a view called elevation, and then specify location to view. So I click it and I put my elevation over here. This is how I can insert a named view. So you can see that here we have in the view manager, we have already have the elevation view and the plan view. Now similarly, if I want to insert the plan view into my site, into the layout, so I go to the MV command, and I have this named view, and I can say the plan, and I can have the plan view over here. So this is how I basically insert different views that I have created in my project. Now after the named view, there is an option called new view. Now this is a very interesting option. So if, let's say, if you select this new view, it will take you to the model space and it will give you an option to select the view that you want to have in the viewport. For example, if you click on it, it will basically select the viewport, create the viewport for you, and the view will be there inside it, and press enter, and then you will be able to bring it into the your canvas, that is in your paper. So this is the MV view has with the name view. And the polygonal view is you can create a polygonal shape kind of feature, and then you can basically insert your view. So go to the model space and then you can increase it. So this is how you can basically use the MV command. And then the fit option is the primitive one. I mean, it basically, if you erase all the viewport and if you say MV and fit, so it will fit the entire model space into the layout. That means the viewport will be fit into the entire paper space. So this is the fit option. And apart from that, there is more options that we will be discussing in the MV to finish the concept of MV and then come to the layout portion. So we go to the MV and then we have this option called 2, 3, 4. So if you want 4 viewports, you can always click on it, and now you can see that all the 4 viewports are there, and you can create different views and scales inside the views for the page setup. And then let's say we have 2, 3, 4 and the layer option. So reset viewport layer properties. So I would say yes. Now other thing that you can see here when we are talking about layers, so it is very interesting. So now let's say if you have got 4 viewports over here. Now here in the layer you can see that there is something called viewport line weight, viewport transparency, and other options are there. So now here you can see that VP color, VP line weight, VP transparency, and different options. Let's check some objects. Let's say we have this wall layer. The name of the layer is the A wall. Now let's say if I go to the layer and into the wall layer option, and I say that the VP layer is blue. So what will happen? The color of the wall in this particular viewport will change. Similarly, if I want to have the color of the wall in this viewport to be different, so I would go to the layer option and then I would say VP layer as, let's say, it's a green. So here the wall color will be different. That means in the viewport you can have different kind of permutation combination of the colors, line type and line weight, which will not affect the model space. So let me explain you. If I would have changed the color in the normal color, let's say I'm not taking the viewport color, so what will happen, it will, so if I change the color over here, the entire wall layer will change, color of the wall object will change in the entire sheet. But here I am interested to only specify different colors and line weight at a particular viewport. So it gives you a liberty to, if you go to the layer now, if you sit, so it will happen like this. Select the viewport that you want to make it current, go to the layer and then change whatever you want. Let's say you want at the viewport color of the window to be red, so you can change it. Similarly, you can have line weight, transparency, and other thing. So there is an option called VP transparency, so you can also increase the transparency of that particular line, so it will become transparent. So let's say window object, so I change the transparency to 40, so it's changed. So now the window layer, a window layer, the color would be 20 and the transparency is 40. Now you can see it has been affected over here. So just zoom in and see that windows are very light. So because this has affected at this particular, now you can see how the windows are light. Now if you look into the, go to the layer and change the transparency, let's say to 0. Not the layer transparency, but the VP transparency. The viewport, the object inside the viewport. So you can see that some changes will be happening. So now it is of a different color. So let me give it a try with a different color. It's a blue. So that it can be distinguishable. So this is how basically the layer are controlled for particular viewport. So again, let's say if you want to put the particular layer off or on, so you can freeze, not on and off, but you can freeze a particular layer at a particular viewport. For example, if I want to freeze the wall layer at a particular viewport that I have selected, so it will not affect the other layer. For example, look at this here. I have frozen the wall layer for this particular viewport, but wall objects are being seen in the other viewport. So this is what the concept of viewport isolation works. That means every viewport will be controlled by different properties of a layer color, layer line weight, layer line type, as well as the layer control visibility and of different scales. For example, this particular viewport is having a particular scale. You can set it into 1:100. In this viewport, you can set it into, let's say, 1:30. You can have different viewports with different kind of scales. So this is something that when you're working on a project, so this particular type of situation will come and forth. So this is what about the MV command I like to say. Next, I will be taking a project in which I will be telling you how to set the sheet, and then we will be moving towards plotting.